Anyone at all? Anything that
Mine
they
is
want
that I hate Section 8.
to? Yeah, Section 8's a nightmare. Are you dealing with an investor that's trying to buy an apartment building?
No, it's mine. I briefly told you about it. My tenant hasn't been paying and I can't evict him because of the moratorium. So
Right.
going through all that.
Well, let's hope that, see, the problem is that if you go to sell it, a new owner doesn't want to inherit the problems. There's two major problems, Section 8 and senior citizens,
Yeah.
because seniors can be anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 to move them out in relocation. But we'll go over that on Friday when we're together, okay? And
Okay.
we'll try and figure out the best way we can figure it all out, okay? All right, guys. So as I promised you, I'm going to take you from start to finish on a deal now. All right. So if you have your piece of paper out, I've got the dry board in here. Try and see if we can situate this. I'm going to do the best. Let me see, which is this way? No. Okay, because I'm going to move this around a little bit. So I don't know if you can see this or not. The very first thing that you're going to hold on for a second. That helped. It's just a red marker, so that's part of the problem. Anyway, I want you to put up here in the top of the box. So if we're going to go through this together, the word offer in a box. Okay. Nothing happens till somebody writes something and it's not accepted, right? Well, we're not going to accept it yet. But when you present your offer, you have to have three valuable pieces to it. Does anyone remember what it was?
Peter, we can't hear you that well.
Now you can't hear me that well?
Yeah, when you go to this side, your voice gets muffled.
Okay. How about now? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're presenting your offer, you have to have three vital pieces with the offer. Does anyone remember what they are?
Pre-approval letter.
Okay, so pre-approval letter.
Proof of funds.
Proof of funds. What's the third one?
Score.
Sorry?
Credit score. Credit
FICO.
score.
FICOs. Okay, you cannot present an offer in this market, in this world, without those three. And it can no longer be a pre-qualified letter. It's got to be a pre-approval letter. So pre-approval, proof of funds, and FICO. And the proof of the pre-approval letter can't be older than how many days?
45.
Okay, and the proof of funds, your bank statement?
60 days.
Right. Remember this. Cross out the account number in the on the letter, please. Okay, any valuable information, whether it's an account or a social security number or something like that, just take a black Sharpie and cross it out. Okay, because that's information you don't need certain. So you've got your offer, and then you're going to go one of three ways. You have your response, right? And the response is going to be that either it's accepted or countered. Or the third one is it's just flat out rejected, which is happening when we're in multiple situations on a lot of them. So again, if it's accepted, great for you. And I'll give an exclamation point. If it's countered, you're going to have to go back to the other side and respond to their counteroffer. And different things that could be on it. Best price, final and best price. Removal of appraisal contingency, or a shorter escrow period, or shorter contingency periods, or your buyer needs to.
Peter, sorry, we're losing you again.
You're losing me again?
Yeah, we really can't hear anything.
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I,
I think you need to keep your mouth right in the screen there. As soon as your mouth drifts off to the side, it's almost like there's a maybe AI or something that notices and shuts you down a little bit.
all right, let me see if I can improve the volume on this. Maybe that'll help.
Or if you have any like headphones, that usually helps too.
No,
I don't know if you have
unfortunately, I left those home. So, all right, let's try this. Can you guys hear me now?
It's going in and out.
You guys are gonna visually walk through this with me, okay? Because I know that that works. So, and when you get your counter back, you're then going to find out from the other side what you have to counter back, okay? So you've gotten your deal accepted, which means what? Congratulations, you're opening up escrow. Don't start warming up and do your victory dance yet, whatever you do. You're just getting started. So for all of you that think, oh, well, you know, this was great. I showed property. I did this. I did that. That doesn't mean anything because nothing really happens now until you get started and working on all of this. Okay. So I want you to understand that just because you've been showing property, that's the easy part because now you really get into everything. So from there, you're going to start on your due diligence period, okay? Under response, I want you to put an arrow and then write in the word due diligence. And we're going to go a couple of different ways here. What is some of the due diligence that will take place during escrow? And by due diligence, I mean it could be potential contingencies. So what are we dealing with when it comes to that?
Inspection.
Okay, that's one. Put a little dot, put an arrow going to the right on due diligence and write the word inspection. What else?
Appraisal.
appraisal.
What else do you go through on due diligence that will determine whether your deal is going along or not?
Loan.
Sorry? Well,
Loan.
that's part of the appraisal.
Okay.
How about seller disclosures? You're gonna get all the seller disclosures. And it's a package of about 50 pages, believe it or not. And your buyer's going to go through those. And your seller's going to prepare them. What else? What else do we need to approve as part of our due diligence going forward? How about the prelim title report? Got to make sure it's clear. Right? Because if there's a cloud on title, you can't transfer it. So we've got to make sure that we can do that going through. What else? The NHD statement. You want to make sure that the property is not in a flood zone, an earthquake fault area, a high fire area, asbestos or radon or some kind of chemical dump. We're the county I grew up in New Jersey. Hold on, Les. The county I grew up in New Jersey used to have a Ford Motor plant up north. Anyone who's a big fan of cable TV on HBO, they did a special on that years ago, where all the kids that were born up in that area were born with deformities and deformalities. The town I grew up in had the power plant in it, and I know we all watch The Simpsons, so we all know about the three-headed fish, the three-eyed fish. But the true story is, in the town I grew up in, back in the 60s, and early 70s, and I'm dating myself right now, But 70%, this is a sad note, 70% of the mothers that in the town I grew up in developed breast cancer. Yeah. Okay, and you signed a waiver when you moved into Richfield. That was the name of the town, that you couldn't sue the public service. Okay, Les, did you have a question?
Yes, so I wanted to know,
Mhm.
the minute your offer gets accepted, then this is when you request from the realtor the seller's disclosures, the prelim title, or who are actually
Okay, we're
asking
gonna,
these for?
okay, so the disclosures will come from the listing side. The prelim, the NHD will come from escrow. Okay, so we don't have to request that. That will come from escrow. Now, before we get to this, did I miss anything between getting the offer accepted and opening up due diligence? Think, did I miss anything? There's a gap here.
Opening escrow?
We opened up escrow. And
When it was accepted, we opened escrow? That's what you're saying?
when it's accepted, the moment that it was accepted, am I missing anything? Remember who I've been making fun of. Did I miss anything?
Did you, was the offer accepted?
Yes.
Did you, okay.
And I know some of you guys have been laughing when I said it. Should I give a clue?
Yes.
Has anyone reached out to Turkey Neck? Remember, this is not going to be as easy as I thought. It's a no-brainer. Easiest loan I'll be able to do. Best, most amazing.
Sure.
A lender.
Lender.
The moment your offer is accepted, you must call the lender. Okay?
So when you call the lender, you ask them the dates on the contingency, the
No,
appraisal contingency?
no. Let me explain. The moment the offer is accepted, the first person, after you call your client and say, congratulations, we've got an accepted offer, you call the lender. Because remember, the lender has been telling you, you have the greatest client. It's a no-brainer. You know, he's going to be able to close it in earlier than 30 days. The moment you say, congratulations, I want to give you a heads up, we're in escrow, he's going to change his whole personality, or she's going to change their personality. This is not going to be easy, you know. And here we are in April, right? You know, Christmas is coming up, so we're going to have holidays in the way, and we got Thanksgiving coming up, and you know, we got to be careful because we might get a blizzard. They will give you every excuse in the world to protect themselves from closing it in 30 days. They will blame it on you. They will blame it on escrow. They will blame it on the buyer not giving them all the paperwork. You've got to make sure that you and the lender go arm in arm on this, okay? Because it's the two of you. If something goes wrong, it's going to come down to you and the lender, not the buyer, but you and the lender. Okay, so the moment that offer is accepted, you've got to tell that lender, here we go. Am I perfectly clear on this right now? If you don't, and you don't alert that lender right away, you're going to have a problem. And I've been doing this 22 years, and I've closed over 1,000 transactions, and I have never heard a lender once go, this is going to be the easiest loan in the world once you open escrow. And the reason that I call them turkey necks is they wobble their heads to and fro, and their necks and throats go crazy. They will blame everyone under the sun but themselves on why this can't close in time. Here we are, the end of April, okay? They will blame it on July 4th. Okay, I have had so many lenders When I've opened up escrow in the middle of October, they don't think to themselves and don't think that Thanksgiving is coming up. You lose that entire week because they don't work on Wednesday, they don't work on Thursday, they don't work, they don't work on Friday. And half of their staff is off that Monday and Tuesday. So keep that in mind. Okay, when you prepare and you start looking, keep in mind the timing. See if there's holidays. Okay, if you get into September, okay, you guys are going to be very well versed on other religions and other ethnicities. When you get into September, you get into the high holy Jewish holidays. Okay, a lot of lenders are Jewish. They don't work on those days. So you start losing days on that. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind going forward. If you get up into the spring, you have Good Friday, you have, yes, Easter's on a Sunday, but they will blame that they can't get anyone on the phone that day, even though no one works on Sunday, okay, except for us real estate agents. So keep that in mind. Look at your calendar when you're planning things. And explain that to the listing agent in your email when you say, look, I'm asking for a 35-day escrow because we're going to be running into the July 4th holiday if you're into the middle of June or whatever. Because I don't know when July 4th is this year, but if it winds up in the middle of the week, you're going to lose half that week because half that staff is going to be off. Okay, you've got to really work to make sure that that lender is in step with you. Because remember, you're the one on the front line with the other agent, right? Right? Yes? Yes, okay, everyone agrees with that. Not the lender. So the lender is either going to make or break you. And you're only as good as your word. So let's go back to the due diligence because you got to reply.
We lost
Okay.
you.
I know. When you get to the inspection, right, you're going to put in what's called a request for repair. And that's where you're going to ask the seller to correct what the findings from the inspector found on the property. And again, that's part of the negotiation. That's part of the give and take, where you're going to start looking and you're going to say, okay, the following, the seller can come back and say he's not doing anything. He'll do some things, or they'll give you a credit. And you and your client, meaning your buyer now, have to make sure that you're totally in sync on that. Okay, but you must be checking with the lender. Now you're going to be multitasking. You're going to be juggling a ton of things. You got to make sure your buyer gets in their deposit. How many days do they have to be able to get their deposit in? And most times, by the way, these days it's wired. Very rarely do we work with a hard check anymore. Per the contract, we have 3 days from acceptance. From acceptance, we have 3 days to get the deposit in. Okay, if your buyer doesn't, you are in breach, and the seller can go and unilaterally cancel the agreement. Oh, I said agreement, right? That contract, that RPA, the residential purchase agreement, becomes a legal binding document. Okay, that becomes part of escrow. I don't want to scare you guys, but I just so that you fully understand what you're looking into. That is a legal document. Your name is, you've signed it. Therefore, you're part of that agreement. Make sure that you keep totally in line with everything that's on it. Okay. You've got to be in touch with that lender. How often? Especially the first 10 days of a deal. Every other day. Make sure that they don't come back to you in a week and say, well, the buyer's not giving me any information or I'm missing paperwork from them. Don't allow them to have an excuse. And if it means that you've got to come down on your buyer, you have to come down on your buyer because it's called performance. You've got to make sure that your clients are performing. By the way, if you're representing the seller too. Because the seller has 5 days from acceptance to get all the seller disclosures to the other side. Okay, otherwise the seller's in breach if they go outside of that, and then the buyer can cancel unilaterally if the seller's not performing, right? It's called non-performance. So we want to make sure that our sides are working hard to make sure they're doing that. Don't allow the lender, and I know it seems like I'm coming down hard on the lender, but the lender can either make or break you. They can make you look like crap, or they can make you look like a god or a goddess, however you want to look at it. Okay, but if the lender fails, the lender is the one who's going to say, you have to tell the other agent that we're behind. Well, wait a minute. When you were going off and you sent your email over to the, we talked about personalizing the email with the offer. You told them it was going to be the easiest, steadiest deal they've done in years, right? That your client is highly, qualified and highly motivated and this and that. And now all of a sudden you're saying, geez, I don't know if we're going to make this the 12 days that we wrote in on the contract for loan approval. Who's the other side going to come down on? Not the buyer, not the lender. So I'm looking at Sarah, I'm looking at Luz, I'm looking at Taylor, I'm looking at Kevin, I'm looking at Jenna, I'm looking at Valerie, Lionel, I'm looking at all of you. That's who's going to get blamed, because you're the one that's gotten into the contract and transaction with the other agent. And they're not going to want to know anything. And especially if you happen to win out on a multiple offer situation. And I'm the first one to say, when I've picked somebody in a multiple offer and they start playing a game or putzing around, I become unhinged. And if you think I drop F and S bombs here on Ignite, you can only imagine what happens during the transaction. Okay, Valerie liked that one. Okay, so Sarah liked that one. Lionel liked that one. You can only imagine that because your adrenaline rush is going. Okay, and I will tell you this, after 22 years and all of those transactions, the moment I get a deal done, I go to this, because that's then becomes part of the game. I calculate to the penny what my commission is going to be. 22 years later, I'm still guilty of it. And if any one of you that's sitting in this class right now says, oh, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to call bullshit. Because you don't work for free. You work to close to get paid, right? So don't think oh, I'm here to help people. Oh my God, then go work for the Salvation or the Peace Corps. I'm serious. We don't work for free. This is not a profitless business, okay, or a nonprofit business. This is a for-profit career and a lucrative one. And the higher the transaction, the bigger the numbers. And you are going to have your file, you're going to have your transaction, and in the back of your mind, you're going to know at the end result, before you do that, after you do that victory dance, what that check is going to be. Okay, and you're going to need that lender to partner with you to make sure you get it done. So the lender's going to go through everything. And when the lender finally gets all the conditions they need to get in, to know they have an initial conditional approval, they're going to order up the appraisal. I want you to put an arrow to the left of the loan process and write in the word appraisal. Now, the listing agent, the seller, the buyer, and you, the buyer's agent, don't call for the appraisal. Only one person is qualified to call for the appraisal. And who's that? Who have I been picking on?
Lender.
The lender. And the lender won't call for the appraisal until he's sure he can get a loan. Why? So this is where it gets kind of funky right now, because you're going to almost feel helpless. Okay? You're going to almost feel helpless right now. why does the lender wait to call for the appraisal until he or she knows he can get a loan?
They don't want to sink any money into it until they know they can close.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if they can't get the loan in the long run, then why would they pay up front for an appraisal that's not going to go through, that's going to be lost money for them?
Guys, you guys all understand that? The buyer, not me, not you, not the lender even. The buyer has to give a credit card. It must be an independent source by the principal. Remember, there's only two principals in the deal, buyer and seller. The buyer will pay for the appraisal up front. Not the agents, not escrow. Okay, escrow's doing their own thing. Here's another thing, stay in your lane. Don't play escrow officer. Don't play home inspector. Don't play lender. Don't play appraiser. Be the real estate agent representing the principal that you're representing. Okay? The appraisal comes back. Who meets the appraiser at the property?
Agent.
Seller's agent.
Who, Taylor?
Both agents.
Anyone? Normally I say there's no wrong answers in Ignite. Anyone else want to take a stab?
I think it's just the seller's agent, listing agent,
Why?
because they're going to be trying to make their case with their comps and stuff. They're the ones who are trying to make sure it gets higher, really, because the buyer's agent might be fine with it going a little low so that they can pull out of the deal and maybe make a lower offer in the long run.
Keep going. Anyone else want to add on to that? Good job, by the way. Anyone else want to add on to that? The listing agent is the one that meets the appraiser. Why? Because the listing agent is the one that set the price in the MLS for the value. Even if it goes, Anthony's right, even if it goes over, okay, the listing agent is the one that has to validate where they are. So if, let's just say, so that you listed at $1 million and through an overbidding from multiples, it came to $1.1 million, the listing agent is the one that's got to bring the comps to the appraiser to support the value. Y'all got that? Everyone understand where I'm at with that right now? Or is
No, you
questions?
froze.
I'm sorry?
You froze. Can you repeat that ending?
Yeah, the listing agent meets the appraiser to support the value. So he's the one or she's the one who brings the comps to substantiate where she got the listing price from and where they got the purchase price from, should there be a difference. Now, when the appraisal, that answer your question?
Yeah, what were you saying after, if it comes in at 1.1 and then what?
If it comes in, so now I'm going to get to that. So if the appraisal can go one of three ways. It could come in at value. It can come in lower. And then you have a couple of scenarios. The appraisals don't come in higher anymore because they don't want to piss off the seller. If it comes in higher than the purchase price, the seller and the seller finds out about it, they'll try and cancel the deal then and raise the price in the MLS on a reboot. So if it comes in at value, great. That's when it mostly happens, okay? If it comes in lower, you can go one of three ways. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Ask for a discount.
Okay, ask to go down to where the appraised value came in. Is that what you're saying, Valerie?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's one. What else?
Ask for, like, I don't know how to word it, but concessions in other areas, like money towards furniture or
Appraisal doesn't, that's part of the due diligence.
okay.
For like that, okay? Let's go back. So you can ask to go down to the appraised price or value. You can ask to meet in the middle, right? Or if there is an appraisal contingency in place, the buyer can just cancel if the seller's not willing to come down or meet in the middle. There is a fourth option. And that goes back to our friend who? The lender. And the lender can decide with the bank if they're going to maybe require the buyer to put more money in to create a better loan to value ratio. So are we clear on all four of those? Any questions? Yep.
I was wondering how common it is that people challenge the appraisal, because can't you, challenge it and appeal it essentially, or is that not something that happens in practice?
What do you mean challenge and appeal it? Give me a for instance, and then I'll.
If you don't like the appraisal price, or you feel like it's not taking everything into account or something like that, is there any way that you can switch to a different appraisal agent or lobby this appraisal agent with additional evidence or information to try and get them to reconsider what their judgment has been?
Okay, good point. So let's just say that the appraisal comes in low. Okay, if you're the listing agent, you can ask for an appeal or a review. And remember, the appraiser is an independent contractor who is independently chosen by the bank. Now, before the market crashed, you used to be able to call your neighborhood or your neighbor who is an appraiser to come out and do appraisals. Now it's like the Wheel of Fortune. You have certified appraisers, they're all licensed, and the banks decide if they're part of their preferred vendor. They hit a button in their computer, and that's then how the appraiser is chosen. So I will give you an example of what happened to me. I had a house in Burbank that was 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and 1,700 square feet. It was a remodel. The appraiser was coming down from Bakersfield and got stuck in traffic. And what should have been an hour drive turned into a 3-hour drive. Needless to say, he got down there and he was extremely cranky. The appraisal came in $37,000 under value. When we requested to see the appraisal and we got a copy of it, the appraisal had it in at 2 bedrooms, 1 3/4 baths, and only 1,400 square feet. He left out a bathroom and a bedroom. Okay, so when we asked for an appeal and a review, he came back down, bitching, mother effing me that he had to come back down. And then I walked with him and I counted to him like a school kid, bedrooms and bathrooms. And to spite me, he came back $6,000 under the price. But the square footage was correct, the bedrooms were correct, and the bathroom was correct. Okay, so you're going to run into those problems. Now, on the other end of it is, you can't just dispute something unless it's actual factual. Okay, so I want you to understand that, Anthony, on your question, you can't just say, well, how did you come up with that figure? Okay, I'm not the expert appraiser, he's the licensed appraiser. But when they blatantly miss a room or square footage or a bathroom, then you can appeal and ask for a review. Remember, the banks frown upon that because that's a sore eye against them, because they're the ones that hired the appraiser, even though it's with the buyer's credit card. Okay, that answer your question? Or am I missing something? Are we good on that?
I have a
No.
question.
Okay, let's stay. Most new agents, let's talk about the appraiser. Let's stay on this for a minute or two, because there's always a question about it. Go ahead, Valerie.
It goes back to what you were saying before, though. It bothered me a little bit. Do the appraisers know already what the asking price is?
Yes, they have a copy of the purchase contract, and they've
But-
also pulled their own comps.
Mhm. And don't they have a responsibility to, I mean, I know as a buyer it sucks, but playing devil's advocate, like if it is worth more, then like shouldn't they like say that it's worth more?
Do you want the party line or do you want the real answer?
I want the real.
The real answer is yes, they should, but they don't,
Mhm.
because they don't want to create havoc where if the lender says, oh, it came in $50,000 over value, can you imagine if you're representing the seller and he finds out that he sold low by 50 grand?
Mhm.
He's going to do everything in his power to block that sale from going through. They just don't do it anymore. They hit the value mark on the nose, or they come in slightly under.
Okay.
But a good listing agent will be able, a good listing agent will be able to be the one to bring it into value.
I'm curious why this doesn't happen at the beginning of the whole process when you're starting to list it, so that it's accurate.
Why would the seller want to pay that kind of money when he's already paying you a commission to sell his house? He expects your professional opinion to know where the list price is going to be and where the purchase price is going to be.
Mhm.
Sellers very, very rarely will. Okay, let me back up a half step. And I'm not picking on you, Valerie. Do you have any idea what an appraisal costs?
Me?
Yeah.
500?
Anyone else?
It probably depends on the size of the property.
Okay, keep going. Thanks, Vanessa. Keep going. Valerie, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, okay? Lionel, you want to take a shot? You have any idea what maybe an appraisal costs?
Appraisal cost for some reason, I was gonna say like it's kind of probably like a little bit of both based off square footage, but probably give ballpark anywhere from like 2,500 to 5,000.
Okay, so-
Or a percentage price.
No, so an appraisal will start out right around 1,000 for like a large condo, to an apartment building being 20 or 30,000. Yeah. I saw your eyes, Sarah. They just lit up like a. See, it's great. I know it's great for me to be able to. Yeah. I did an office building years ago, and the appraisal was $30,000.
Because at the time
Now
it takes.
Now the building was 18 million. But it was 30,000. The appraisal took the entire day. Okay, that's why sellers don't do it up front, Valerie. Okay, now somebody's going to turn around and go, well, what happens when you refinance? Isn't there an appraisal? Refinance figures are different than purchases. Okay, that's apples and oranges. So that's the reason. But a seller on a residential sale, which is mostly what we're talking about right now, is relying on you to give them the value and then to make sure that you do your job when you meet the appraiser. And you don't want the buyer's agent there. You don't want the seller there. You don't want the buyer there. You want just you and the appraiser one-on-one to be there. And as you do more business, you're going to start to get to know some of the appraisers, and they're going to know and trust you. Like when I do a development, and like just my development that I recently did on Balboa with the 42 units, I had the same appraiser on 12 of the units. And after the third unit, he was like, just bring me the comps, we'll walk it. I already know your spiel. This is a no-brainer. Okay, so remember, all of these vendors you want to be friends with, even inspectors. Okay, they're going to be your best friends, and they're going to be your worst enemies. So let's keep moving now from the loan process. So, under the word loan process, you're going to write the word approval. We're gonna assume, and I know what happens when you assume, but we're gonna assume that the appraisal came in at value. Okay, so we're gonna, with an arrow going under loan process, we're gonna have approval, but to the right of that, I want you to put an arrow going to the right side, loan approval with conditions. So that means there's conditions. What could a condition for the loan to be finally approved to be at? And by the way, I know now you're going to say, well, wait a minute. You said that the lender is charging the buyer's credit card, right? The lender has a good idea by then and is confident that they're going to be able to get the buyer a loan, right? So again, this falls back to the lender. Now, what could a condition be before they get a final sign off?
More money down, perhaps?
No, we're good. We're good. What could a
Oh, we're good on
condition
that.
be?
Okay.
What
okay.
could a condition be? Simple one.
Gift letters.
Okay, do you need a gift? Yeah, okay, so if it's, are you saying, Sarah, if it's more money down, like, let's say your parents are giving a gift?
Yeah, or if the inspection has findings, you have to fix it. No.
Inspection has nothing to do with it. Let's talk about a condition.
Oh.
How about something as simple as calling your place of employment to make sure you actually work there? How about making sure that you're in the United States legally? How about making sure that the prelim is clear? Oh, this has nothing to do with the buyer, but you want to make sure that the property they're about to lend on can clear title. See how things now are juggling back and forth? Right? Now you got the prelim pretty close to getting, a couple of days after getting accepted. You read the prelim and you saw that there was a mechanics lien on the house, meaning a mechanics lien, they had all new plumbing done and they didn't pay their bill. So the plumber has like a $9,000 lien on the property. Or what if they have a tax lien? Well, as long as there's equity in the house, those liens or clouds can be paid through the proceeds. What could be another condition? If it's an FHA loan, you need termite clearance. That could be a condition. So in other words, the termite work has to be completed before the loan can be written off. Okay, so we're good on that with potential conditions. Because right under the word approval, this is a big one. This is a really big one. I want you to write in right under that arrow, contingency removal. I want you to put contingency removal in a box. And the reason why I'm saying we box this one, this is a really big one. Buyer hereby removes any and all contingencies. Why am I asking you guys to put this one in a box and why am I making such a big deal of it?
You can't cancel once contingencies are removed.
You can cancel. You can always cancel. But
They're not responsible.
You don't get your deposit back.
bullseye. You have left your deposit open and exposed. That's why there's the liquidated damages clause in there. It's that 3% deposit which exposes your limited liability damages. Remember we were talking about that, I think, a week and a half ago? Why when, if you get into a multiple and somebody doesn't put in a full 3% deposit, it's not looked as favorably as those that do. Remember we had that conversation? Here's why. If all contingencies are removed and the buyer decides, I just don't feel like closing, the seller can go after the deposit. The most single important thing you're going to do before you send the buyers the all contingency removal is what? We're going to go back to my favorite person now, so I'm giving you a hint.
Lender?
And what about the lender, Lionel?
He has the final say.
Keep going. This is music to my ears, bro. You're right on target. Why? Think.
He's the one that's ultimately gonna see if they get the money or not.
Okay, stop there. I'm gonna fill in the blanks. You're gonna get it in writing from the lender. You want the lender to send you an email. Yes, we are good to go. Buyer can remove all contingencies. Why?
Liability purposes.
Why, Vanessa? Think
Because
for a second. Hold on. Before you go, think. Think of everything I've been saying now. Now go.
because our name's on it.
Our name is on it, but why am I
it's a
asking for the lender? Why am I asking for the lender to give it to me in writing that he's saying we're good to go? Remember, if something screws up, I'm going to give you a hint, okay? Put the pieces together on this. If something screws up and the buyer can't close and the buyer's deposit is potentially exposed, who's responsible? The lender, not you. So here's what I'm saying to you as a real estate agent. Remember I said stay in your lane? Okay. If the lender is the one that puts in writing we're good to go and then can't get the loan, and the seller goes after the buyer's deposit and gets it, who's going to be responsible for reimbursing the buyer their deposit? Now, let me give it to you in dollars and cents so you understand what I'm thinking. If it's $1 million deal, 3% is what? 30,000, right?
Yeah.
You got $30,000 you can just write a check to? I don't think so. The lender will be responsible. Now you're all smiling all of a sudden. This is why I say it's so very important that you are on the same page with that lender. God forbid that something happens and the lender is the one that said go and you don't have it in writing. If you don't think for a second that lender is going to say, well, I didn't put it in writing, so you did it on your own. Prove it. Prove to me I said that to you. Remember, no one wants to write a check if something screws up. Get it in writing from the lender. Yes, we're good to go. You can have the buyer remove their contingencies. And that's after you've agreed on the inspection and you've done all the disclosures. You're going to get down to that contingency removal. Make the lender put it in writing. And if they bitch and moan, just say, I just want it for my file. Why, you don't trust me? I just want it for my file. I don't want to see you guys working for free. Or more importantly, if it doesn't close, you've worked in the negative, right? You've lost money on it. Okay. The good news is we got through it. So you removed all contingencies. Don't warm up the band. Don't warm up your feet yet for the victory dance, because we still have to do another arrow going down. 5 days before we close, we're going to do a final walkthrough. The final walkthrough is for what? The final walkthrough is to make sure that the property is in the same condition it was as when you entered into escrow. Now, if repairs had to be made, you're going to take your request for repair form. You're going to go item by item and make sure that the seller did it correctly. You're going to have the receipts for the work that was done correctly. If there was a credit given and no work, do you still do a final walkthrough? Absolutely. Why? Because we've walked in on properties where a kid's room has had posters on the wall and the posters were then taken off and there were holes in the wall. Or I've been in a house where a kid had a Britney Spears poster on the door, and when they were getting ready to move, the kid threw a hammer through the door. And you couldn't see it because that's why the Britney Spears poster was up. I will tell you a situation I had early on in my career And it was the top most expensive transaction I had done. It was a $3 million deal. The seller, who was very difficult during the transaction, had 2 500-gallon fish tanks in his living room. They are huge, these big saltwater fish tanks. When they moved them and the stanchions they were on, where one of the stanchions were, the hardwood floors were blackened and water stained and rotted out. They didn't disclose that. So when we went into the final walkthrough, they said, "Oh yeah, it's been there forever." And I said, "No, you can see the square where the stanchion was. There was a leak." "Well, what do you want me to do?" "Well, we gave you full price for the house. We want you to correct that." "Well, we're ready to close." "Well, we're not anymore. Because this isn't the condition of the house that we entered." Well, it was, but it wasn't disclosed. So what we did is we held up the funding until the seller agreed to leave $25,000 in escrow to repair the floor. Because there was no guarantee on what was going to happen. We didn't know if there was mold under the floor. We didn't know if the floors could be, shaven or resurfaced to match. So we had to come to a figure. But we got it done. So you sign off on the final walkthrough, and then the lender funds the loan. Okay? Just before the loan funds, the lender is going to make one last phone call to your employer to make sure you're still working there. Not you, the lender does that. So the loan funds. Are you high-fiving yourself yet? Okay, don't. Because every once in a while when the loan funds, when somebody in the processing department reviews the loan docs, there might be, if you're signing your name with your middle initial versus your last versus your full middle name, you have to do it on every single signature. Okay, you can't just sign Peter L. Miller sometimes and Peter Lance Miller another. You have to sign it consistently on every page. If you're initialing it and you're using your all 3 initials, you have to do that everywhere. One page, one initial can kick it back. But in this instance, everything's good. So the loan funds, the remaining for one last thing, which is the confirmation of recording with title. Once that happens, the day after the loan funds, you are closed. Congratulations, you're getting paid. Now you can do your victory dance. But as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts on all of this that tentacle out and go all different ways to various different aspects on how this works for you. There are some hiccups along the way. There are always going to be speed bumps. It's up to you to be the grown-up in the room. You got to be Dr. Phil and be their shrink, because your buyer and your seller are going to be doing this because their emotions and adrenaline are going to be running high. And even though in the back of your mind, you've put in your calculator what you're going to make, you can't bring that to the forefront. You have to make it such that you take a deep breath and say, I have to put my client's interests over my financial expectations. So when you look down at this chart, you see all these arrows going down, 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 but these sideways, that's why they call them sideways, because they're, obstructions, they're distractions, but they're all part of the transaction to get you to the finish line. But do me a favor, please, stay in your lane, be the real estate agent, and don't try and play the other agents, okay, or the other vendors. On the inspection, don't start quoting them what you think repairs are going to cost. Okay, hold your ground. Because I will tell you this, most of the time, once you get into a deal, very rarely will a client dig in and go, I'm not doing that. F you, the hell with you. I don't care. Okay. Most of the time, once you're into, they don't want to start over from scratch. They want to be able to get the deal done. Why? Because if they have to start over, why'd the last deal cancel? Well, they did an inspection and found out that the HVAC wasn't working. Well, it's going to come up in the next inspection anyway. So if you're halfway through escrow, why do you really want to start if you're happy with the price you're getting and you know it's going to pop up again? At least now you know what you're in store for here and you know what animal's in front of you. So that's where you have to be able to handle that and go. Questions? Okay, now you can do your victory dance because you successfully closed your first transaction. Congratulations. You got through it. Keep your paperwork and your file necklace. Make sure that you know, make sure that you know exactly where you're at. Okay, make sure that you understand every different part of it. Because if there's a problem, they're going to look to you for answers because you're the one that got them that far. They're expecting you to finish it. So I expect you to get them to finish it. Okay?
Peter, I really appreciate you tell us the appraisal for the purchase and the refinance are different because
They are. They're
Finance-
totally different. They're totally different.
$600 and then you said for purchase will be much higher.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It could, depending on the size of the home and the type of the property will depend on what the appraisal fee is. Okay?
Great.
All right, guys, I told you it would take an hour. It took an hour. We've got our last class on Friday. If you've got any questions from any of the other sections, we'll talk about it on Friday. We'll get going and have a good rest of the week until I see you all on Friday. Okay?
You too.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
Peter.
Thank you.